Hello, hello. And turned on. Well, we had Instagram, but it looks like it dropped out. Let's see, we should be live on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Add some Instagram to the mix, and we'll be up and cruising. There we go. Perfect. Okay, well, hello. I'm Kevin, for those of you who we are meeting for the first time. Nice to meet you. I'm a realtor based, I live in West Jordan, and I help clients, diverse clients, all sorts of clients, anywhere from West Point to Park City to Provo, Orem, Santaquin, Tooele, and anywhere in between. I've got a few things we can talk about today, but if you guys have any questions, you can send them to me via the chat of whatever platform you're on, and I will see them. You could also text me, 801-358-1353. You see that on all my profiles. You could also DM me, whatever you feel comfortable. If you don't want to ask a question directly, feel free to do that, and then I can just respond to it. Let's see, all right. I'm so excited to be doing the streaming today too. Like I sit in front of a window that faces west. And normally when I do this, the sun's already down, it's dark, and I'm so excited that summer is coming and that we finally have some sun staying later in the day. Some warmth, even though we need snow, understandably, but I am definitely a summer person at heart, so I will take it. All right. So a couple things I thought would be good to talk about today. I've put a couple blogs out about this on my website, so I encourage you to check them out. I can kind of share the screen and show you kind of what we're looking at. So equity isn't just a number, it's your financial freedom tool. So this talks all about equity, so we'll talk about that in a minute. Oh, I don't need to sign up. I'm already the owner, but if you want to sign up, I'd love to have you on my list. The rent versus buy myth, why cheaper rent is actually costing you money. Your first investment property can be your home. These are the first few I wanted to kind of talk through. So a lot of people have this idea that to get wealthy, to get money, you have to buy investment properties and real estate and do all this stuff. And sure, that works for some, but for a lot of us, that's not realistic. We don't have $100,000 to put down as an investment property to buy, so it's just not realistic. The easiest way to gain wealth is actually through your individual home. I've gone down the path for me of using like house hacking, kind of that idea of buying a house, looking for different ways that you can kind of rent it out, either part of it or all of it, and cover your mortgage. So I've done a lot of having roommates, having like renting out a basement. I did things like I flipped some staircase to create a separation to make 2 units. Hi, Luis, welcome. So starting with that first home that you can afford yourself is that first step that really kind of sets up these dominoes, if you will, to really set you apart. And it's done for me. I'm not like this rich person who lives on the hill, but I feel financially comfortable. I have some good retirement saved up. And I just think to myself that if I didn't have real estate, I don't know how I would accomplish to even get where I'm at, let alone to like where I want to go even further. Generally, buying a home that you can have, roommates help pay some which way, that is essentially paying for your living expenses for free. It's great. Sure, there's interest, there's all that involved. Um, and I put a little statement on here how this works so well, especially for queer folks that are in the LGBTQ plus community. Um, our families are often chosen families, and they're maybe not the traditional family structure. So having friends, having other professionals live or share space with you, that flexibility creates a big advantage. Lots of different options if you don't want indirect roommates. That, like I said, that one of my homes, I flipped a staircase, and that created a basement apartment with a separate entrance. So that way I have my space, they have theirs. Not my space, uh, but it created that separation. There's opportunities as even a first time home buyer. You can buy a duplex. Kind of this example here. This home is in like South Salt Lake. Considered a duplex. You buy the whole unit, but you've got a separate unit you can rent out. There's a lot of ADUs, accessory dwelling units, that can be like a backyard unit, or space above a garage is oftentimes where you'll see like a mini apartment or a studio. You can also do things like short-term rentals when you travel, Airbnb. Tons of great option there. But this is kind of some math that I put to some of this. So not only are you have a mortgage for maybe a home in Murray or a duplex in Murray that's around 550. You rent out the other unit for 1,800. You're only paying 1,700 yourself. Compare that to like a one-bedroom apartment. I don't know, like really almost anywhere that is a one-bedroom apartment for $1,700 a month. Maybe at best that's what you're going to get. But the difference here is you're gaining equity. So if that is the great rate that you have, having the ability to actually have that money go to you instead of paying your landlord's equity and building their wealth, pay it to yourself. And then you've got somebody else helping you on the other side. Tons of home areas I recommend. Some other good things to kind of get started. Get pre-approved. Know what your budget is. If you have questions about lenders, I have some great ones. Lots of different options. Look for properties with rental potential. Whenever I go to properties, whether it's for me as an investment property that I want to buy a rental, or a client who has that same interest, I'm always looking for ways to kind of split up the unit. Can you flip a staircase as example and create a basement apartment? Can you somehow add a wall or do a divider? A lot of homes in Utah are split levels. So you come into a landing, go up or down. How could I create a wall and some doors there so you kind of have an upstairs unit and a downstairs unit? I'm always looking for stuff like that to make it flexible. More flexibility, the better. This kind of gives you an example of what makes the difference. Right here, this is the monthly median sales price and the monthly median payment in Utah. So you can see right now we're sitting around 550 is kind of the median home price in Salt Lake. There's other areas that are close by that you can get less or get a smaller purchase price, so you can get the same house. So it's that location difference of what's important to you. But then when you tie that with like interest and that payment range, what you're not accounting for that often gets forgot is that equity growth. On average, homes in Utah double in value every 10 years. So when we think about this, the home I'm in now, I paid like $335. At the time, I was blown away by that price. I was like, that is so expensive. It's now, I see homes in my neighborhood go for almost 700,000. So I think to myself, like, where could I have gained essentially $300,000 in equity or wealth or something in that, even in 10 years? Like, if I'm playing the stock market, to get that much, the stock market gets as good as like 20%. Sometimes you get lucky with big Tesla stock or Facebook or something, but those are very rare and uncommon. Real estate is a much more locked in kind of investment style, investment strategy, and having that growth is just mind-boggling. Let me see if we've got any questions while we're cruising through. Let's see a question. House hacking. Okay, so let's come back to this for a sec. So house hacking is just really any creative way that you can get more value out of your home than what you've maybe put in, what you paid for it. So having somebody else rent out a basement or a duplex on the side, or even if you want to buy one of those multi-unit, where there's two and two, 2 units upstairs, 2 units down, and they're all totally separate units. First-time home buyers can qualify for that as long as they occupy it. It can also mean buying a home that has an old kitchen, has an old bathroom that needs some remodeling, and doing some house hacking to change the countertops, to upgrade the cabinets and so forth, to then have your value increase. So there's a lot of different ways you can approach house hacking. This kind of is just focused in on what does that look like as far as roommates or renting out some additional space. Now, say you don't want to rent out. You don't want to play with that. You don't want to play with roommates. Totally fine. It still is your best financial tool to gain wealth, owning your own home. This is kind of a fun story. I was talking to a client who'd owned her home in Sugar House for about 3 years. And her home had appreciated about $120,000 since she'd bought it. So like 3 years, she has essentially $120,000 available for her. And it's kind of that question of like, what do you plan to do with that equity? What does that mean for you? What are your options? If you're not familiar, equity is that difference of how much you owe versus how much it's worth. So if it's worth $500,000, you owe $350, you have $150,000 in equity. Equity naturally grows by paying down your mortgage, but then it also grows with your home appreciating over time. Now, kind of the real value here is what you can do with that equity. This is where that kind of wealth building idea, even if you don't want to go into roommates and rentals and that kind of stuff, really makes a difference in a lot of people's lives. First one that a lot of people use it for is buying their next home. You buy your first home, it's probably a starter home, if you will. Maybe it's 400,000, maybe it's 500,000. It's a couple bedroom, maybe a couple bath, kind of small. But being there for a few years, you now have this $120,000 or $150,000 of equity. You can go buy another home and use that equity to help pay for that next home. So it's a great way to continually like upgrade over time and not have to just dump out another $150,000 out of your checking account. Um, a lot of people don't have $150,000 in their checking account. Now, the other thing that home equity um, can be used for uh, is one, pulling out cash for emergencies. You can pull the cash out really for almost any reason, but you want to be smart with this. You don't want to just get yourself into more and more, crippling debt that you can't afford. But sometimes life happens. A car dies, you need to buy a new car, medical bills, jobs disappear, different things like that. You can access that equity through like a home equity line of credit. You can do a cash out refinance. So that's where they replace the whole mortgage and then give you a chunk of change after. And there's also like a home equity loan. So these options give you a lot of opportunities there. The other big thing that helps a lot, especially if you're looking at refinancing or cash out refinancing, is again that ratio of what do you owe and what is it worth. They'll call that like a loan to value, is also kind of a percentage. You've probably seen this you see this with cars. You've probably seen this with people who've talked about buying a home. Oftentimes lenders don't want to lend more than 80% of the value of the home to the purchase price. So it's kind of that same equation. If you all of a sudden now, a couple of years later, have all this equity, you can do a cash out refinance for more, for up to that. Again, like 80% is a common number. First time home buyers, they usually do higher, so you've got some options there. Just it's almost this idea of like free money. Where did it come from? It's sometimes mind-boggling. Another good example of what to use that equity for is invest in the home itself. How can you make that value of the home grow? We talked about remodeling a kitchen or bathroom. Those are the things that sell homes. Everybody loves a nice bathroom, a nice kitchen, and those homes that have well done remodeled kitchens and bathrooms sell fast and sell for top dollar. You could finish the basement. Maybe as you go down the road, hey, maybe I will turn it into a basement apartment. Have a couple friends that would want to move in, something like that. Add an accessory dwelling unit. Make energy efficiency upgrades. I did this with my home as one of my rental properties. I did a cash out refinance. Same thing, I'd had it for a few years. It had gained equity. So I'd been paying off the loan during those few years. But I made a cash out refinance for an additional chunk of funds beyond what I had already owed. And that whole thing became my new mortgage. The payment changed maybe $50. And I used the money to put solar panels on my current home. Where I'm at now, we just burn through power. I have roommates in my basement, so there's a lot of people here. And some months our power bill was easily $500 in the summer. We had an old AC unit at the time. We have a much better one now. Putting solar on pretty much wiped out my power bill. So here I went from a payment of mortgage that increased $50, but then my electricity bill went from $500 to roughly zero. I saved about $450 a month there. And I added value to the home because those solar panels are going to continue to work. And if I were to ever sell the home, it's now highly valued because of those solar panels. So things like that, like how can you use that money to get yourself further ahead? You could also use it to buy an investment property. I know I've helped a few clients do this. They get a home equity line of credit or something, and they, not ever having that $100,000 or more cash, now they have that available through the equity in their home, that they were able to put that big 20% down, usually what it takes for an investment property, to actually make the purchase and then start renting it out. Want to run all the numbers in those situations, make sure you're going to be cash flowing in a good direction and not hemorrhaging money. But that's how, us regular folks, us real human beings, grow portfolios. If you're starting a business or changing a career, that's a great way to use some money out of that as well. Let's see here. What you need to know before tapping into equity. Don't think that equity is free money. We've kind of talked a little bit about that. It's not something to just get yourself in trouble with. I know sometimes thinking of going to Vegas or something like that, gamble and try and double and triple it, not a good use of money. If you know, you know. But smart uses, down payments, investments, home improvements, emergency fund if you have to, business investment with a solid plan, pay off credit cards. Sometimes this can be risky though, because if your behavior and your habits haven't changed, you're just going to rack those credit cards back up. So you've got to make that change. Buying things that depreciate, going on a lavish vacation, cars. By all means, I'm a big proponent of, you've worked hard, reward yourself, but reward yourself moderately. Maybe you spend a couple $100 on this gadget or this toy that you've wanted and thought it was silly and never got it. Great, go do that. I just got a telescope and I'm a space nerd, so I'm super excited for that. And yeah, it was like a couple $100. It wasn't very much at all. Speculative investments, especially if you don't understand stock trading, you shouldn't be out there playing in those. And anything that doesn't increase your net worth or quality of life long term, probably stay away from those. Let's see. Okay. Let's see if I have any questions. Okay, let's look at this one. So there's that myth of rent versus buy. And, rent is cheaper, so why don't I just do that? Because buying a home is more expensive. We've talked a lot about equity, but here's some actually numbers of how that can look. So if you rent, say you're paying $1,700 a month, that breaks out to about $20,400 a year. Essentially, you're giving somebody $20,000 a year. Rent increases, maybe to $1,870 a month. That's 10%. It's typical, not crazy. So the second year you've paid $22,000. Rent increases again. Now you've paid $24,000. Rent increases again. You're now paying $29,000. So over those 5 years, you paid $122,000 for somebody else's portfolio to grow, and you walked away with nothing. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that's what you like, what works for you. No pressure, no judgment. If you buy a home, that year 1 to 5, there's 2 things that are a little different here. This is an example of it's a little bit more expensive. You're paying $3,200, but probably if you're paying $2,400 within a few years, you're probably up to $3,200 anyway. So that's one change, is that you're essentially locking in and fixing so you don't have any more rent hikes. And you're locking that in for 30 years. Whereas if you're renting year over year, even every 6 months, depending what your rental agreement is, you could be looking at an increase in cost. Now, this example, then the total you've paid over 5 years, 192,000. You've built approximately $80,000 to $100,000 of equity from paying down your mortgage and your property appreciation. So here you've paid 192, but you're walking away with 80,000 of that at the lowest. You also get tax deductions on your mortgage interest. You can get tax credits if you buy solar, if you put a new AC unit, tons of other options that can happen. And maybe use that 80 to 100K for an investment property, for something next. Tons of possibilities there. Let's see here. Yeah, just a reminder, the gap between renting and buying gets smaller every year. Now, when we talk about what 500K actually gets you, because there's many different neighborhoods around Salt Lake, in the Salt Lake Valley, what does the Salt Lake market actually look like? So in Sugar House, for that 500,000 range, you're likely looking for a townhome or a condo. There's going to be some older homes that would be available at that price point. Some people love those with character, but they're gonna need some updating. They're not gonna be the shining gem of the neighborhood. If you're looking in the avenues, you're likely going to be seeing condos for sale, around kind of the downtown area, or smaller historic homes that are going to be old. You're really just paying for that location and that walkability. Now, if you go a little further to Murray or Mill Creek, single family homes, 3 to 4 bedrooms, good bones, established neighborhoods. These are great areas, obviously much larger than a condo. West Valley, Taylorsville, you can even find newer construction or larger homes that have yards, more space for your money. Rose Park, Glendale, it's a great up and coming area. Lots of homes under 500K. It may not be your dream home. There's always going to be something that isn't perfect about the home. But kind of this idea we've talked about, stay there for a few years, grow that equity, bring that to your next home, and keep growing, keep getting closer and closer to that perfect home. It's not forever. A lot of people think, well, if I move, I want it to be my forever home. It's going to be difficult for a lot of folks to come up with a big chunk of change to buy that forever home. And if you're renting, you're likely going to have to move anyway. Your landlord's not going to continue to extend your contract forever. What else we've got? Oh, down payment. A lot of people talk about how much is needed for a down payment, where to get it, what does all that look like? So a lot of down payments only require 3 to 5% down. So on a 500K home, that's 15 to 25K. I know it's not pocket change, but it's very different than like $100,000 or so. A lot of people use their tax returns. Either save those up for a couple years and they get pretty darn close to that number, and then maybe some additional savings. There's a lot of, if you have a 401k, there's a lot of programs that you can take a loan out of your 401k. The interest you pay back on that loan, you pay back to yourself. They usually have a couple small fees, but it's also usually allowed for 30 years. So you've got a long term and a low payment. Gifts from parents or family. That's a common one. Sometimes mom or dad or siblings have some extra funds, maybe from their home equity line of credit, that they could gift you to help get you in. Monthly savings, skipping that Starbucks or that Beans and Brew, building that $5 a day. Now, kind of how these loans work, and these are a little more focused on kind of first-time home buyers. But FHA, as little as like 3.5% down. They're called 203K loans. for those rough houses that need some fixing up, this is great because um, you have the money as part of buying the home to fix it up and have it be what you'd darn near like as your dream home without having to come up with that money separately. Conventional loans, you can do just as low as 3% down. You might ask, like, why conventional over FHA and like why are those percentages different? FHA usually has better interest rates, is what we see. Conventional sometimes is a little higher rate, but then they balance that out with how much down. You can also do things like seller concessions. Sellers can contribute to your closing costs. They can help you pay for interest rate reductions, um, escrow fees, title fees, all that kind of stuff can be negotiated into a contract. And then there are a lot of first-time homebuyer programs or grants that are available to help people for like a one-time lump sum. Utah had one a couple years ago where they paid, I think, $20,000, and they essentially gave it to you as a loan, so it was a lien on the home. But after, I think it was after so many years, the loan just kind of disappeared. They wrote it off. So it was a kind of like a grant for you, but to make sure people were using it properly, they tied a time element to it. So if you did sell your home within a year, people were thinking try to use it as investment properties, you'd have to pay that $20,000 back. So a lot of great opportunities. Don't wait for it to be perfect. That is a big thing. A lot of people are waiting for interest rates to go down to that 2 and 3% again. They're probably not going to go down that low. We're in a really balanced market right now. If you want to wait for that, great. The balance that you pay, and I'd love to get you with a lender to show you the hard numbers for this, but waiting till that rate goes down, prices go up, you pay more, you're actually paying more out of pocket with a lower rate and a higher purchase price, opposed to buying now at a higher interest rate and a lower purchase price. Sometimes that makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. But when we speak just financially and out of pocket and total expenses, most of the time it does not. Yeah, there are still affordable homes. Oftentimes, if you're paying $2,000 in a month in rent to $2,500, easily get you in a very nice condo for that same price. If you're getting up to $3,000 for a larger home, single family homes are available for that mortgage payment. So I'm just a big proponent of pay yourself. Yeah. Current home prices, we've talked about that a bit. Oh, this would be a fun one. So it's kind of this idea. I love this little AI of me. It even has like my watch and my ring. It's perfect. When you're selecting a realtor, there's a lot that can change when you have somebody who you can trust, who actually gets you, who's like understands your life experience. So many things that just click into place and it makes everything better. Things that you shouldn't have to navigate alone. If the pronoun dance, explaining relationships at every showing, or your sexual orientation, or if you don't look like the traditional perfect couple that everybody maybe is expecting or experiences in certain situations, you don't need to have to explain that every time. So having somebody who gets you, who's a part of that community. The neighborhood question, right? Will we be safe here? But who you ask that to is going to interpret that differently. So having an agent who understands what that really means. The paperwork maze, navigating stuff that maybe doesn't reflect the traditional family structure. Is the lender going to ask invasive questions? Has the title company worked with couples like you before? I find partners that I work with that I educate and make sure that they're aware of the situation so that they can come in as strong as possible. But I also only work with folks who also support that diverse clientele, so they're already familiar and aware. The seller, not knowing that person on the other side of the table, are they going to have a problem with who you are? That's something that having the separation of a realtor, they take care of that for you. So things like, no explanation required. We can give you honest neighborhood insights about what's going on. You can just focus on finding your home. Advocacy when it matters. Your job is to find the home you love. My job is to clear that path. If it's documentation that we need to work through that fits your lifestyle, maybe it's not the perfect standard form. We'll find it. We'll make it work. The right questions, asked differently. People might say, are you looking for good schools? Whereas I might ask, what does daily life look like for you? What do you need to feel at home? Those might be different questions that wouldn't get answered and would likely come with a different outcome. The other kind of practical differences, network knowledge. Talked a lot about the lenders and other folks through the buying process or selling process that I work with, that I make sure that they have my client's best interests in heart. Market insights, things are changing in different neighborhoods all the time. Legal issues, I'm aware and watching all those things. Let's see what else we got. Are you ready? Hey Trevor, welcome. Got a few people coming and going. Yeah, so a few things. I wanted to show, I've added a few things to my website recently. So I've got some reviews that cycle through here. A lot of people have to go look through them for, Google or Zillow or Realtor.com or all these different places. So I've just condensed them all here. So you can talk, see what folks think of working with me and what the experience is like. Let's see here. We also have some market statistics. Let's see what's going on in Salt Lake since we looked last. All right, so days on market, we're sitting around 69, 70 right now. If you're not familiar with this statistic, this generally means when a home comes on the market, it doesn't sale or doesn't close, fund, totally finish the sale until it's been on the market for about 69 days. This being an average, some are longer, some are shorter, but that's where that middle point is. So homes take about 2 months and a few days to actually sell. Now we do see every quarter two that number drop down. So we likely will see that. We've already seen a good pickup of the market because our weather is so nice. We don't have snow. People are out there looking at homes, ready to move. Nobody wants to move in the snow, but hey, no snow, let's do it. We'll also see active listings generally spike up. A lot of people wait until March or April to list or sell their home. Part of it's just timing with the school systems. A lot of our school systems, end of May is about when the summer break starts. So that April, May, sometimes we'll lock them into being able to move in summer. And then median home prices. We usually also see this go up in Q2. It's still a pretty good balanced market, but some years we saw, from here, went from 525 to 574. That's a 50K jump. If you would have just waited 3 months difference, you'd have paid that much more for a home. If you can, Q4 is always the time to buy. Essentially, it's that idea of real estate is on sale. And it's just because there's not as many buyers at that time. All right, let's see what other questions we've got. Okay, I've got a couple here. I want to buy a home, but I feel overwhelmed and don't even know where to start. Start with, so first step, take a look at how much you're paying right now for rent, how much you would be comfortable paying a mortgage, because there's a difference of how much you'd be comfortable paying and how much sometimes, or how much a lender would approve you for. Oftentimes they approve you for more than what you're comfortable with. So having that number established, come to me with that number and I will show you homes that would fit that and what that would look like. On my website, there is a section called Book where you can book a chat with me directly, and we can look at those things for your specific situation and see kind of what's your best next step. No pressure, no judgment, no sales pitch. Just offer guidance and answer questions to see where we can get you or what it looks like. Yeah. Where we can get you to, sorry. Let's see, another question. Pricing of homes. So this is always kind of interesting because a lot of people have this idea, or Zillow has told them how much their home is worth, and so that's how much they want to get. Their neighbor down the street, they saw that they sold their home for $700,000, so my home should be $700,000 too. When we look at homes and values, there's a couple things we look at. One is we look for homes that are as close to similar as possible. So if you're in a Rambler, a home that's just one level at the main level, maybe a basement, we're going to compare that to other Ramblers. If you're in a home that's a 2-story, you've got an upstairs, downstairs, maybe a basement, or a split level, those homes are going to be compared to very similar homes. So we look at what has sold that's very similar to your home. Generally in the last 6 months is about the window. One of the methods that I look at is I identify price per square foot. And we look at how much these homes are, charging that are really close to your same square footage, your same layout, your same style, your same amenities, your same level of finish. And we can apply that price per square foot to your square footage, and that'll give us a pretty close price. Now, the other thing we compare that to when we're selling a home is what other homes are for sale in your area. Because that first method might give us a number of 550,000. But if we could then go look at the homes that are for sale that are, again, very similar in your area, we might see the most expensive home out there is 520,000. So if you have a list of homes and you see one 520 and 550, you're probably going to go look at the 521 because it's cheaper. So that might mean we need to adjust that price, that the market has maybe cooled down a little bit since that last 6-month window. These numbers can literally change week over week. So that's something I constantly am looking at to identify that. On the buyer side, I'm doing a similar method to make sure you're not paying too much for a home. This helps us go into the negotiations and an offer with a number we feel confident in, that is a good win-win for you, for the seller. Hopefully that's the one that makes it and closes the deal. And voila, new home for you. Okay, let's see what other questions we've got. 50-year mortgage question. So we've heard our president and his administration talk about 50-year home loans. I don't think it's going to happen. There's a lot tied into that. And I also wouldn't recommend it. And I'll tell you why. Right now, at a 30-year, that's already a really long amount of time. And all that interest over the 30 years is a pretty hefty chunk. But we do it because it's what we can afford as kind of an everyday. We can't just come up with $400,000. If we take that same amount and carry it over to 50 years, two things happen. One, our eyes get too big and maybe we buy a much bigger home than we should, and we're not living within our means. Two, even if it's a similar home, the amount of interest you're paying is so much more. It's nearly double. I get it's a little bit of a lower payment, but that's just so much more money that you're throwing away to a bank or financial institution. Let's see. How do I know that I'm going to, when I'm looking at homes, how do I know that the home is in good condition, isn't going to be a money pit? I think we've all seen that show with Tom Hanks from, I think it's the 80s. So a couple things take place. You have, once you're under contract and we've, aligned on what those initial terms look like, all buyers will negotiate in a due diligence period, is what it's called. And during that due diligence period, we have a big list of things that we'll go over. We'll look at, if you plan to rent it out, what are the rent numbers going to look like? We're going to do some inspections. We're going to look at the foundation, the roof, the plumbing, the electrical, the walls, everything. We're going to do some tests. I always recommend a meth test, a mold test, a radon test, if especially in Utah. Radon's huge. We're going to make sure that the home is safe for you. We're going to look at, does it have all the utilities that you need? Do you need super fast fiber internet? Can you get that at that home? If not, are there other options? So during that due diligence period, we're doing all this investigation, all this analysis to make sure that this is the best fit for you. If for any reason we find things that aren't great, aren't going to work, we can say, hey, you know what, thank you, sorry, we're going to walk away. Any deposit money you've put down comes back to you. Oftentimes with inspections, little things, sometimes even big things, come up. It could be that there's maybe a leaking plumbing fixture, or this electrical, there should be there's not a ground on this outlet, or GFCI in the bathroom, sometimes stuff like that. Those things are often easily fixed. So we can have the seller either have those things repaired and get proof of that, or we could just ask for some concessions for us to pay for those fixes after we own the home, after you own the home. Sometimes those smaller things like that aren't big deal breakers. Fast internet, that's a little bit out of our control. So if your home isn't slated to get fiber, this home isn't slated to get fiber in the next 5 years, we might have to find somewhere else. So yeah, due diligence period, all that money, any deposit comes back to you. You can just walk away, and we'll make sure it's a good home and not a money pit. Let's see, next question. Home value, growing home values. So the question is about, is there a difference of home values? We've talked a lot about equity growth and so forth between different types of homes. Yes, there is. The homes that appreciate the most are the ones that are most valuable and most sought after. In Utah, that is single family homes. There's a lot of condos, there's a lot of townhomes, there's a smaller amount of single family homes, so those become more desirable. When something is more desirable, value goes up, price goes up. Not to say the others don't grow in value, but when we talk about what appreciates the fastest, that is single family homes. Okay, next question. Oh man, it's 5:50 already. We're coming up on time. If you want to, okay, so the question is, if I'm interested in working with me, what would some first steps look like? So one of the things that I have on my website as well is a guides section. This lays out honestly what it's like working with me. From today, you can probably see my personality, see kind of what's important to me, what I'm about, how I help folks. This also talks about the things that we will do through the buying process, through the selling process, everything that's included, marketing, home warranties, everything that's covered. And I do also provide a draft of what the contract agreements look like so that you can read that over, make sure you feel comfortable before we even start talking about any details or signing anything. I also offer those, I call them coffee or tea chats, where we can just talk about what's going on. What's your situation look like? We can get to know each other a little better, make sure it's a good fit. I'm a big proponent of if we're not a good fit, let me find somebody who is, because it is very successful, very key to have a good connection, a good relationship with a realtor, because we're going to be texting a lot. Okay, next question. Oh, there was a post recently of me with a dog on a couch. No, that is not my dog. I am a big dog fan. I used to have two Doberman, Duke and Duchess. This is a client of mine's dog, whose name is Hera. She is the sweetest lab. She's so fun. I've loved just going over and playing with her since I don't have any dogs at this point. But in the future, dogs will happen again for me. Just taking some time to enjoy being an empty nester for the time being. I am a cat fan too, but my husband is allergic to cats, so cats aren't in the cards. But all animals, I'm a big fan. Not a fan of spiders and snakes, scorpions. No, thank you. Okay, this is a different kind of question. What is your background and what got you into real estate? And I actually have a blog post, my real estate story. Uh, Feel free to look at it for a little more detail. But I learned young that to gain wealth and to like get ahead in life, I kept hearing over and over and over when I was like 18, 19, really young, that real estate is the way to do that. And so the more I looked into that and discovered that, I discovered some of these concepts we talked about today. Equity, how to use that, how to decrease cost, how to house hack, how to do all these different things. I myself have followed that. I started with a very small condo that at the time was like $70,000. Stayed there for a year, moved out, and I rented it out. I was dating somebody at the time, so I moved in with who I was dating, but rented that out. That started giving me a little bit of rental experience. Do I like this? What do I want to do? From there, I bought another single family home and I rented out and had roommates. Because during college, before buying this place, I had roommates, so no big deal. Um, from there, I sold the condo, bought another single family home, rented it out, decided I didn't want roommates anymore, so I moved to where I'm at now, did more house hacking, so it's got a basement apartment, and then I rented out the other place. So for me, seeing how that has worked and how that has helped me get ahead in life, it's just the fruition of reality of what I was told and what I understood at the time. Um, I'm super technical. My associate's degree is actually in automotive, so I'm a bit of a car nerd. I have an MBA in tech management, and that's funneled. It covers all the MBA topics, but it also is funneled around what does how do products and how do things get mainstream and get successful. It's that idea of Apple launched the iPad, but HP also had this tablet thing that was identical to it, nearly identical to it. Why did the iPad become wildly successful but the HP thing didn't? That's a lot of the questions that my MBA focuses on. So I think and I see things in a little bit different light. And that's really helped me in a lot of this journey. Having bought homes, owning rental properties, I want to see those that are in my network, that are in my sphere, do the same, gain wealth, set themselves apart, set themselves ahead for the future. That's where I get my intrinsic value, is seeing others grow and succeed. That I was able to help and be a part of that journey. Um, that's what's really amazing for me. If you have any other questions, I'm an open book. Email me, text me, all the good stuff. But with that, we are sitting at an hour, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up. Thank you so much for joining today, and we'll look forward to you soon. Talking to you soon. Take care.